What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Essential Scares. I am your host, Corbin. With me today is Alan.
Good morning.
Bobby.
Huh? What? Huh? What? Oh, hi. Oh, hello. Hello. Oh, I was just dozed off there this morning.
And Grant.
What's up?
In celebration of Independence Day, today we're going to be talking about the FOREVER Purge, the newest and supposedly final entry in the Purge franchise. Bobby has a spoiler warning for us, of course, to kick us off. Bring us in.
Hello. This will serve as your first, one, and only spoiler warning for the brand new movie, The FOREVER Purge. If you do not want the movie, The FOREVER Purge, spoiled for you, please skip the time code ahead. The FOREVER Purge takes the bold and radical stance that racism is bad. Corbin.
That is about 50% of the radical opinions that this movie attempts to make, and I love that that's one of them.
Yeah,
the other one,
the blatant one is racism is good sometimes.
right? 80% of the movie is racism is bad, but one of the main characters is a racist, and when he's racist, it's mostly okay.
Yeah, they have this whole scene, like where like it is, and Corbin called it in the theater, where like it's about like what, like 60% through the movie.
Yeah.
And the two main characters, Juan and
the white guy,
the white guy,
Yeah,
whose name escapes me.
Justin?
No, I don't.
No, that's not it.
No, but they're sitting in the front of the truck that they're using to try to escape to the border because the FOREVER Purge is happening. And Dylan and Juan are talking, and everyone else is asleep. And Dylan's been racist to Juan a couple times, and Juan goes, "Hey, let's cut the shit." And there's actually a pretty good moment of like, "Hey, let's slice the shit." You mean cut the shit? Because like Juan is not he does not want to learn English that well. He's like a proud Mexican guy who moved to America because he had to. He's like, "You don't like me and you don't like Mexicans." And Dylan says, and this is put in a weirdly like sympathetic light, where he's like, "I don't hate Mexicans. I just wish we could all just stick to our own." And Juan goes, "Yeah, you might be right." And then there's a pause, and another pause, and another pause, and he goes, well, we're together now, right? And it's just like, so like,
and then the scene ends, and they never talk about it
again. So like, the message there, if I'm listening to this, like the message that I received, and maybe they were trying for something else, is yeah, it would have been nice if blacks and Mexicans and everybody could just stay segregated from one another, but we fucked that up, so now we all have to get along.
Which I think it's extra funny.
Which is not a good message at all.
Yeah,
it's
extra funny because like the bad guys, right? Their whole objective is to purge the country, right, of anybody who's not a pure-blooded American, which means white. And so they're very much like everybody die or get out. And then the good guys simultaneously hold the identical opinion. They just aren't killing people over it, so they're the heroes.
Yeah.
Oh, and I mean, they are killing people over it, but for different reasons.
Which is weirdly, and this will be the only time I mention this, which is weirdly like, you know, an allegory to our two-party political system.
Oh, boy.
We've got the racists who are super racists, and then we've got the racists who don't want to kill the people of color.
Yeah.
The Democrats are that one.
I find.
Oh, thanks, Bob.
I said this, because me, Corbin, and Bobby all went to the same movie theater and watched it, and we kind of had a little spat afterwards. I feel like the lack of character growth is kind of what gets me more than anything. And, like, it's just the characters that hold these opinions at the beginning, and at the end, basically the opinions never really change, and you never really get to see them grow. It's just, like, they try to...
Hey. You're wrong, because listen. Dylan at the beginning doesn't want his kid to learn Spanish, and at the end he says gracias, muchos
You're right. He's a
gracias
changed man.
to Adelia
that's
and Juan.
that's like metaphorical, you know.
It was just like
The beautiful
you
metaphor.
know, at the beginning
Yeah.
he's Dylan specifically is blatantly racist.
Dylan.
And then halfway through, you have the talk between him and Juan, where he's just like, "Hey, I'm not racist. I'm just racist." And then at the end, he's just like, "Hey, gracias." Just kind of like that doesn't just make him completely 180.
I'm not racist. I'm the socially acceptable racist.
Like Juan at the beginning is like, "Man, I wish we could have just stayed in Mexico." And then at the end, they go back to Mexico, so he's like, "All right, we're good."
Yeah, he got
it's
everything
just-
he wanted.
Yeah, and it's just like I feel like none of the characters, even the sister, like, is the entire time like okay with Mexicans and the other races. It's just the brother. So her liking Titi was not like a surprise to me. I'm like, okay, this is really cool. I like this, and then obviously it gets ruined. But yeah, like I just feel like none of the characters really grow, and that bothers me.
Well, I think one of the big issues in general is this movie isn't a horror movie, like in any sense of the word.
There's like 16 jump scares, guys.
Yeah,
Oh,
this
man.
is a horror
and
movie.
two of them are even legit. So.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
here's
don't think any of
here's the
them
thing,
were
right? You
legit.
can no, there were two that were legit, and here's the thing, Alan. Legit doesn't mean
Good.
scary or good. It just means that at the end of the jump, there was a real threat. So there's like 100 jump scares where it's just like a small child or a cat or like a bottle falls over or whatever, typical stuff. And then there's one or two at the end that have like a bad guy in them, and those are real.
I don't know. To me, this was just more a generic action movie than it is a horror movie.
It's a horror franchise that's kind of like devolved into that though over time.
Sure.
Like
as many of them do.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I think that, is this one scary? No, not the first Purge, the movie, but the first Purge movie has some scary elements to it. Like it definitely tries to kind of be a horror movie. And just over time, that franchise grew with its audience, basically.
Yeah, it also just didn't really do much with the whole purging. I mean, we see a lot of people trying to purge and kill each other.
That's
but
actually
the
my core issue with this movie. Yeah.
The aesthetic of the movie, I think, is one of the strongest parts of the entire franchise. Because you see these people all dressed up in purge outfits, and that's some of the just best stuff in all of it. Like, in the very beginning, you see these cowboy dudes with skull masks and makeup. There's a lot of gravitas to what's going on with the event. And that is what inherently makes it a bit more interesting. It's like Halloween, but you kill people in a way. So it just it just loses a lot of that ambiance, which is kind of sad. Because then it's just kill shit or racism. That's about it. And it just kind of loses a step.
I think that part of that, kind of coupled with that, is that what makes the Purge unique, I think, is that there's this sort of implication that people are killing a lot of people, right? Obviously, on Purge night all crime is legal, but we only see the murder crime because that's the movie fun part. There's no heist movie about the Purge, but there should be. But there's this sort of implication that for the rest of the year, violent crime is way, 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 way down, right? So you have one very, very bloody night, and then for the rest of the year, people are relatively peaceful, and there's a lot of comments about this throughout the franchise. And in this movie, I do kind of feel like them just going for the what if people just killed all the time is like immediately less interesting because that's just life. People do already kill all the time, and like, I know that they kind of go for the, the government uprising angle. Like, there is kind of like a cool little story there that I don't think that they went all the way with, but I think that you lose like an element of the uniqueness there.
It's a bad attempt at trying to draw parallels to like 4 years ago and still today, right? Like,
Yeah.
like today's current political climate, if you look at left-right politics, because this movie is inherently political, and although I said it was only going to be the one time, I can't avoid myself, I can't help myself, right? There is this constant move on the right side of politics to be like, there's gonna be a pushback, you guys keep pushing us, right? And with election year, right? Election year, and even the first purge is kind of like these attempts to be like, to really shoehorn at least liberal, but even progressive political ideology into this movie in not always effective ways, but like, good on them for the
They're
attempt.
trying.
Yeah, good on them for the attempt. And even this movie, good on them for the attempt. Even though it's just
it is kind of weird because it's like it's not that for the most part the political message in the movie not bad. It's just very ham-fisted.
Yes, yeah, and
it doesn't earn it.
And even this bit with like the forever purge of like, it's like we're gonna start a It's like all this idea of like white supremacists wanting to start a revolution for dumb, awful reasons that are counterproductive to their own even socioeconomic and interests. But like they're just idiots, and like they're idiots in this movie. But
how do you think we would perceive this movie differently if it came out last year when it was originally going to, rather than right now? Do you think it would be that different?
No, I think it's still too old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, but
I feel like I kind of
wanted.
I wanted to hop back to
would have been a little bit more like
Alan's comment, because like I do agree with him. I think like one of my favorite things to see in all these Purge movies is like the masks of the Purgers, because they're like every one of them is like so unique and everything, and seeing like the aesthetic of the people who go about and purge. The bunny mask's really cool, right? But that's like really all you get to see of them. You have like a lot of little cool small shots of like one of the guys at the end I thought was really cool because he had a skull mask and the bottom jaw was just like bullets, like 308s it looked like. I'm like, okay, that is awesome. But like for the most part, after the first couple people in the bunnies is kind of just, you don't get to see that. There's not that angle played because
it's chaos.
Yeah, exactly. It's chaos. You don't really get to have those moments of like, okay, that mask looks cool, that one does too.
The aesthetic of the Purge is like 2 or 3 steps before you get to Mad Max, which I really like that kind of look to it,
And going back to the point that I didn't get a chance to finish.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm jumping in on that because I think there's this idea of even in like the parallels, right? Because I think the parallels are important. With the way that we like glorify the weird violent stuff that we do, right? And like the way that like there's actually even going back to what Corbin said, just to tie this all together, right? Is like the Purge could be construed as a good thing when like it worked, but like this is like the idea of like it never really worked and it was only causing more issues, and when it went away, like everyone realized that, hey, things are bad, and then like only the worst people were going to utilize it, and now they're still utilizing it, and now they're not going to stop, right? And it's like the same thing with like racism and like policies that like promote racism is like, yeah, like you can try to bring that back because you think it's going to be better that way, but it's only going to be used in the worst ways possible, right? And so like there are these like parallels, right? Whether it's the, really interesting that only the white guys in this movie wear masks, and like they tend to don certain, like the white bunnies, like they've got the points, right, and all that stuff, right? They tend to don certain.
There's a specific shot of a guy putting on a white mask, not a hood, but a white mask, and I was like, okay, I see what you're doing here.
There's certain parallels even with the masks that are at like and then they're all wearing Confederate gear and things like that, right? Like and those red, white, they're all wearing red, white, and blue, but like the red is very, very prominent in all of this. And the fact that the Forever Purge graffiti logo is very much looks like the Punisher skull that we see in a lot of like Boogaloo Boys and alt-righter type things, right? Again, it's very ham-fisted.
Yeah.
But, I
And
mean,
very obvious what they're
the
trying to
franchise,
say.
like it always has been. I think ever since the second one, that's how it's been, because that was when they got like the government involved, and I don't know how many of the Purge movies you guys have seen, but this too.
I think I've seen all of them. I don't know.
Yeah, this one really feels like if you watch them all in a row, it's kind of like, okay, I guess I can kind of see the culmination of how they're gonna approach politics here.
Yeah.
So one thing I think the movie simultaneously does great and bad is we've talked about how it's very ham-fisted, but it also kind of subtly throws in things in the background that also, if they focus more on that avenue, we've got a much more interesting movie. And there's two that come to mind. The first one is right at the end of the movie. You see Juan walking. They're walking into Mexico, and he has the gun in his belt, and the hilt has a Confederate flag on it.
I literally started laughing out loud when that happened. When they showed that shot.
So I saw that, and I loved it because I'm like, oh, you killed the white supremacist with a gun with a Confederate flag, and I was like, I found that interesting. I liked that. And then the other one,
hilarious. I just couldn't get over how silly that.
I loved it. Yeah. Well, because it's like, of course, these white supremacists are gonna have a Confederate thing. Yeah. Like that made sense to me. Like I got it, and I liked the imagery there of killing someone with your own gun. I found that fun. Then the other one is right when the Purge is about to get started, and the newsman is talking, just saying, all right, if you're hunkering down your house, that's great. If you're out there purging, may God be with you. And just the tone of that, of the news being like, let's go purge everybody, and if you're staying at home, you're really a bad person for staying at home. You should go be purging with the other good boys. Like,
you should watch the other movies.
Oh, I haven't.
Yeah, I think if that part specifically interested you, that the way that newscaster talked about the Purge and the way that the Purge is approached, the other three you would probably like quite a lot.
I mean, one thing I kind of noticed after I finished this movie is I am more interested in watching the other Purge movies after seeing this, because I was like, I feel there has to be something more than just generic action film that I haven't seen in the previous movies. I wanted to go see Election Year. When I saw trailers for it, I'm like, oh, this looks fun, but I never went and saw it.
They're fine.
I feel like there are so many points where, like, not the plot diverges, but like you can see, like, there's another story going on and we don't get to see what happens, right? Like with Darius as an example, Darius saves Adela twice, and then is like, as a cop out, she's like, hey, come with us. Wait, no, I need to find my family.
We can go find your family together. No, I'll move faster on my own.
Right.
I really feel like
you're a fucking butcher, dude. Like,
they got rid of Darius because I think that they didn't want to do the sacrificial black guy trope, and they decided, well, he can't make it to Mexico, so we gotta kill him off screen. So here we go.
It feels like they wanted a cool scene, but also like the trap scene, which was one of my favorite scenes. I thought it was cool. They wanted that scene, but they wanted to give like a reason of how Adela got out of it. And
there are other people there.
He was the reason. That's what I think.
They wanted to rip the wrongful arrests out of the headlines of a black man for literally saving, like, the hero thing. But they didn't know what to do with him, and they didn't want to kill him because this movie is toothless and does not want to go whole hog on these issues.
And he's the only black guy in the whole movie.
Yeah.
I mean, because like, they don't want to kill main characters, and you can see that, right? Because I mean, the grandpa, what was his name? Mr. Tucker, right? Yeah.
Walter
His name
Patton
is
the actor's name.
Yeah, Walter Patton. Like, he dies, and besides that, like, the entire like core is still alive, going through the entire way. And then when they finally bring in the big bad, 60% of the way through the movie with mother and father, I think is their name actually. Father tells mother, "Hey, kill Juan," and she goes, "Okay," kills TT instead. I'm just kind of like, so you just want like the core 2 to get away? That's what you want to do here?
TT is a classic Dungeons and Dragons NPC. He exists to die and make you feel bad.
He's so cool though. Like he was one of my favorite people. So
I know. Yeah. He did the NPC job. He's like, oh man, what a cool and exciting, fun little character. He's so suave and interesting, and that he dies, and it's like, oh, that's so. Yeah, that I kind of saw that one coming. He was the only character with any level of depth.
Right. So there's the Darius thing that happens, right?
Even
and even when we go back to the farm, there's the they save the rest of the family. They kill Kirk, I think his name was, the dude with the mask.
Yep.
And then Mr. Painted On Skullface runs into the house and says, "We need backup," and we never see him again.
Well, backup
he's just gone.
Yeah.
They got out of there. They ran away.
They did, I know, but I thought because they made his like the camera kind of going on his face so much. I'm like, okay, this guy it's gonna be important, and he wasn't.
He is what they call in the industry a featured extra.
And then I mean, there's another story. There's another story going on that we don't see with the big bad, father and mother and all those people, because then they show up 60% of the way through the movie, and this is obviously not their first time killing people at this particular moment. So there was a story that went along there that ends here, and well, not ends, but meets.
Yeah, but I don't think that we needed to see all those other stories.
No, I don't
feel like that's maybe. Is that the argument that you're making?
No, the main thing that I'm making is I feel like stories diverge, but I wish that big bad was known before as far into the movie as they were.
Do we even really need a big bad in the Purge when everyone is the bad?
I see what Grant is saying, because in the Forever Purge, right? So much of this movie is it maybe this is even effective. The enemy is just racist white people, but it almost feels weirdly ethereal for a lot of it until there's a face to it. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, these are the people we're supposed to be running from, right? Because it's not even very clear what even the racist white people are doing, because it's clear that hey, they look and they see white people in the truck and they still want to hunt down the truck, right? And it's not like they're only killing POC, right? They're legitimately killing anybody and everybody at this point that is not one of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is that's not how that would work even in a in an ethno state. Maybe it would, but because fascism and white supremacy is a death cult in which the term whiteness gets limited and limited and limited to by the end of it, nobody in this chat would even be considered white, because we're not I don't think any of us are properly enough Anglo-Saxon to be considered.
I'm the first one out for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I'm Irish. I'm not that far behind.
Yeah.
I'm Pole. I mean, I don't know how long I'd last in that either.
Yeah,
but it's weirdly ethereal up until that point of who am I supposed to I know I'm supposed to be rooting against anybody who isn't them, but who am I supposed to be rooting against?
Right. Exactly.
Because there's a legit racist in the car with them the whole time, and it's I don't know. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because the movie is bad, but
the truck at the beginning, the whole she hears this, Adela hears the screaming while she's up on the rooftops, and the truck is going by, and you have that armored vehicle that there's obviously some pretty cruel stuff happening in that, as you hear screams from the outside or from the inside, and one, I kind of would like to see what was going on the inside. It's a horror movie, so show me, let me be oh god, that's awful. But instead you just see a hand on the window, and that's kind of all you see at the very beginning.
That should have been something that they did. Is when they get separated, they should have put Adela and the wife, the pregnant lady. They should have put them in the back of that truck and had or vice versa, had all the dudes go in the back of the truck, and they kill TT that way, at in whatever brutal way that it goes, and then Adela, because then Adela, you could have seen her use the gun that she knows how to use, right?
True.
Like, instead of with like the random vampires, like.
So one thing I also kind of picked up on, that ethereal feel, I think that also extends to right after the Purge has ended. We've gotten through Purge night. The feel from that point, when we're between the end of Purge and start of Forever Purge, basically, it has that like zombie movie feel before the zombies really break out, and I really liked that feeling, because you know it's the Forever Purge. Oh, things are normal now. You know something bad is coming. You just don't know exactly how that's going to play out and where it's going to play out. And they really kind of even. She goes into her work. Where is everybody? It has that kind of pre-zombie movie feel. I like that.
He knew where
I will
everybody
say,
was.
I hated that line when she walked into work and says, "Where is everybody? Where is everybody? They're dead, lady. The day it was the Purge last night. Why? Like,
where could everybody be?
It's her first.
Dude, imagine
Purge,
how
okay?
much
She
of a
doesn't know the
nightmare it has to
scale.
be. Imagine how bad it must be to be like a company that hires like 10,000 people. You're like, oh fuck, the Purge is here. You come into next day, all right, guys, how much we lost 2,000 this year? Like, just I don't know.
Hey,
The external side of things, I think that could be interesting.
That's why the Purge doesn't work, because
exactly.
capitalism requires bodies to work at nearly slave wages, and
hey, they talk about that in this movie.
They do say that.
they do.
Just for a second,
They
the farmhand makes a comment about how he's only being given the Purge protection money so he could stay alive, so he could keep being worked for slave labor.
Hey, that's another issue I have with this movie.
There was a moment there where they almost like went for something, and then pulled back on it very quickly.
The fact that they combine like class revolutionaries with white supremacy is really stupid, because the history of class revolutionaries is the history of like race struggle, because most class revolutionaries are black and brown people. So like it's like
they're just trying to have it all.
Yeah. So they're like, and they're trying to get the Republicans less mad at them. Like, well, Antifa's also bad. Please don't yell at us. Like,
So, to Alan's point of the whole like zombie, like pre-zombie apocalypse feel, I also felt that, and there was actually a moment that they got me where like the Purge ends, everybody goes back, and I sit there and go, oh, okay, so like maybe the next one's gonna be the Forever Purge, right? Like I thought it was gonna be a government sanctioned thing, because like they said like unemployment's at an all-time low, so they're just like, hey, this purge is gonna last longer and it give like an undisclosed amount of time. So like we don't know how long it's gonna last, and that's why they think it's the Forever Purge. But instead, it's just like, I like the angle they went with, where like it's the what if people just didn't stop killing after the Purge was over, and I know.
I just think that concept is just boring. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know how you like if you'd watched the trailers. I guess I'd never had an inkling that this was a mandated Forever Purge. It feels very much a open revolution type of thing, because that's just how they approach it in the trailer.
Yeah,
I
they
think
show the scene with the cage in the trailer, and she's like,
Yeah.
"The purge is over. The purge is over."
yeah, and they're like, this is the Forever Purge.
Forever Purge. Thank you for your.
I never watched it.
Yeah.
I went in blind.
I just feel like the entire concept of what if people kept killing after the Purge is just so boring. It's just a boring idea.
It's just obvious.
Yeah, it's like
like
there's nothing unique about that idea. Like the core concept was already interesting, and they played with it in the previous movies, where like they use the final alarm as a real sounding bell for the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Where people are even like about to kill somebody, and then the alarm goes off, and they're like, "Oh well." And like
next year, buddy.
that's so much more interesting than what if he just pulled the trigger anyway a second later. Like that's just,
I guess
every movie's like that. So
yeah, I mean,
I
think
think
it felt cool to me,
and I think that like they even like I get the point of like, again, we've talked about like the political message isn't even a bad one, it's just ham-fisted, but like I think it could have been just as interesting without it in this. Where like
you
if
could
they
have
were
still
gonna do
had
forever,
like a faction of people that purged very specifically instead of like
yeah, like
yeah.
like, or like two different things, right? If they made it like a mandated forever purge, because like we have a high influx of illegal immigration, right? Like, and like it's an evil conservative government or whatever, because the new founding fathers is not necessarily a good thing. Like they're it's a fascist regime, right? And so like having it be kind of genocidal in nature, like, and like government sanctioned genocidal in nature, would have been a more interesting political message.
It also fits in more with the established lore of the Purge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or having it be completely apolitical and being just like killy murder time would have been just as interesting. Or having it be the literal revolution would have been just as interesting, right? And you don't even have to play up the revolution in a positive way, although you should. And have it be like the good rich people who have been treating their employees well are now getting murdered, right? I would have disagreed with this movie's political statements much more if it was that way, but like it would have been interesting, right? Like,
Yeah.
Is this a world without drones?
So it's a very interesting universe because it's set in the future, but their abilities are somewhere between what we have now and what we had in the past.
In 2008.
I asked that because the military gets involved to try and stamp down on purgers.
Yeah.
And I just kept going, where's the drone strikes? Because that's all that would happen.
Anytime
you drone strike the fuck out of this entire country in this situation.
Anytime
why send bodies when you can just make them explode?
Because they can't. Because it's not purge night, so they can't do tactical military strikes on U.S. civilians.
But that's nonsense. They have the fucking military engaging with tanks.
Yeah.
They've already brought out heavy armor. What's the difference?
They had. So I lived in Chicago during last summer's BLM protests. Right, there were tanks all over the place.
Did that tank even fire once?
Yes.
Yeah. Twice, I think, actually.
Yeah, one time the main characters got shell-shocked, even.
Why did they run away from the tanks?
Oh, because because, anyway, the military.
What?
Yeah.
Military bad.
Like, they're like...
even though military good.
We gotta get away from this tank. It's like, why wouldn't you just run past the military? Be like, we're trying to get to the border.
Or
yeah, like the border being open is sanctioned by both governments officially. Yeah. The NFFA government, even though they're the bad guys in the Purge, like they're only shooting armed, insurrectionists.
They're shooting the bad guys in this movie. Yeah.
If you were the good guy trying to get to the border, why wouldn't you just try and walk past unarmed? Like they kind of even imply that they would help you get there. Yeah, like there's definitely a huge logic leap in the story that's required to then make everybody an antagonist.
The director knew that the borders were going to close up eventually and didn't want to send their main characters to the eventually closing borders.
They had to ham-fist white people crossing the border illegally, so that especially the pregnant wife who has what Republicans like to call an anchor baby.
Yep.
Which is just a human being that was born in transit to a better life. And
I will say,
they'd really shoehorn that in to make white people who are never going to see that as realistic or like true, and they're just going to get mad at you for thinking that that's the same thing because they're racist, into feeling something that they're not going to feel.
Yep.
Sorry, I can't help myself.
It's kind of a bummer because I don't think that message brings anything productive, and I simultaneously think that whatever is happening at the actual open border is probably much more interesting for a movie.
They talk about it,
they show that one overhead shot of the border closed and the traffic's all backed up. It's like, okay, show me that scene where the guys roll up on all those cars and what's going on there. Yeah. That's I think much more interesting to watch.
And again, you could rip it out of the headlines, right? Where everybody is running up to the border wall and things like that and trying to climb over, and again, going back to the headlines of the migrant caravan, and then all of a sudden you see tear gas and shit like that getting thrown over from the Mexican side, get the fuck back kind of thing. And it's that reverse parallel that might have, again, it's a much more evocative image, right? And it would require us to look ourselves in the face a little bit more. But again, it fails for multiple reasons. One, anybody who doesn't already see that as a bad thing that we did is never going to see it as a bad thing that we did. And two, they didn't do it. So like, it's, it's
like you said,
so,
the movie pulls every punch it tries to throw.
Okay, so like this is something that I have a hard time, like, the racists aren't racist enough. I don't know how like to say it. Like it feels like their racists are like
they're like baby's first racism.
Yeah. Like there's a dude with a literal swastika on his face who says nothing racist with two like people of color in the car with him.
Mm-hmm.
Like he has a literal swastika tattooed on his fucking face. And he's just like, guns, right? Guns, am I right?
I love that scene, and I know Alan's with me, so I have to say
right?
No.
Fist bump, brother. And instead of being
recalling the guns as like shots are going out is such a cool moment. I
loved it. And then the transition to music, I was in.
Yep.
I was like, all right, this works. I like this. I like this a lot.
So
I think I got so bored of it after like the second time he did it. It's like I very much thought like, okay, how many guns are we gonna go through? Like, how long is this scene gonna be?
Really,
it's not interesting. I didn't like.
They had to mention the AR-15 because they think that's the worst gun.
And that I also like. I love that it's so many totally normal, everyday American weapons, and then suddenly AK-47. It's like, why?
I mean, they are in Texas. Like, it's not exactly out of the realms of access.
It just feels silly because they picked all the other weapons very specifically, and also, owning an AK-47 is very different.
And it's very
a
illegal.
Nazi with a swastika on his face has never been around an AK-47.
I'm not saying it's unrealistic for him to know what an AK-47 sounds like. I'm saying that within the movie's logic, everybody has publicly available firearms, and all of the guns that are used are guns that you could go to a gun shop and buy. That's like the whole point of it. And so for then one of the guns, right? Class 4, for one of the guns to then be an AK-47 just randomly is like, it just seems silly.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I don't think that's that much of a realm jump here.
I don't think that's like a deal breaker.
I think the whole scene was silly, and that was just like put it over the edge.
I just don't think it's too much of a jump in thought to think in a world where you can purge that automatic weapons are purchasable. Like that to me doesn't seem like a very large logical leap at all. So if anything, they'd be more accessible to the general populace, which is why you know that. But skinhead guy.
Yeah, I was about to say...
He's gonna know what a fucking AK is.
But I do agree with Bobby that for a dude who literally made the conscious decision to have a swastika tattooed on his face...
Neo-Nazi!
He didn't say anything bad. Like, he never really offended anybody. I'm just kind of like, looks like a missed opportunity here.
He offended people by his presence.
Neo-Nazi. Like, I don't get it. Like, I want to get it. Like, I want to get why they thought, hey, in a movie about racism, let's just try to tiptoe as hard as we can around the whole racism thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's like either make it about something, like, because I think we can all agree, racism bad, right? Hot take, racism bad. Treat individuals as like human beings and understand that different people come from different situations and require different circumstances based off of our own American history, right? That critical race theory and all that good stuff, right? CRT, critical theory, all that good stuff, but like, why the fuck, like, either handle it. You are not handling it with grace in the way that you're tiptoeing around it.
No,
it's so much more disrespectful.
It's condescending.
Yes, it has that like hoity-toity Hollywood feel in a way that's not good.
Yeah,
it's like they wanted to bring up a very, very sensitive topic without like offending anybody.
Yeah.
And it's just like, one, this is a horror movie, and two, like, if you're gonna go in hard. Don't, as Bobby said, don't tiptoe. Like,
what have we said on the show? Embrace the R rating. and they don't.
That's not what. Yeah, that's what you always meant when you said hard
Yes.
R horror, but.
It's just like there, and it like you said, Bobby. You totally expect that guy specifically to be just completely blatant, and he's not. And you're just like this is
just
weird.
just say a bunch of awful things that make you to make you uncomfortable in being in that van with that person. So when he dies, you get a bit of catharsis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
well, I mean, there's still catharsis in that Darius kills him, but it doesn't really. It's not the same as if this guy was spouting off every slur in the book, and then Darius.
He's an obstacle instead of a point of like, for me, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I agree with you.
Like, but like, no, this movie feels like to me, and I think I said it to Grant and Corbin because we all watched the movie together. It feels like a movie that if like Republicans were good at comedy, this would be a movie that they'd make to parody like the liberal idea of a movie.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's so stereotypical, like white liberal, like, you know. Personally, I think that Mexicans should be treated like people. Okay, I'm gonna take the radical stance and say we all need to work together on this, and white supremacy, bad, right? And like everybody who already agrees goes like, yeah, dude, we fucking get it. We've been getting it for a while. Like, that is like not even nearly enough what we need to deal with, like in the current political climate. And then the Republicans are like, no, excuse me, they're called illegal aliens because we don't want to call them people, sir. And so I don't know. I find it to be toothless. I find it to be spineless. And boring. And that peanut butter and jelly scene was hilarious.
It was. The peanut butter and jelly scene was hilarious. We started laughing out loud in the. There are multiple times where we were literally laughing in the theater, and I felt kind of bad because.
Were you the only people laughing in the theater?
Yeah. Yes.
I love that.
And the theater was in a mix of ethnicities, which is expected for the Purge and horror in general, I'll say. And I felt bad because usually when other people laugh in horror movies, I get so pissed off because like I'm someone who treats horror very, very seriously. And this movie was just like enduringly silly. I couldn't help it.
I mean, even like
because it's not like you were never like laughing at like horror or laughing at, you know, the movie's logic necessarily. They were just like they were putting together these scenes of trying to place a message that were then so over the top and ridiculous in their execution that you couldn't help but laugh at it. The peanut butter and jelly scene, I think, is exactly that. Like, that's the best example, I think.
Yeah, was there any other scenes you guys audibly laughed at?
Yes.
Bobby was laughing
driving away.
Bobby laughed like for the whole movie. Like this is straight comedy for him.
That's true.
Okay, so I've been talking about this movie being very bad. I will say I enjoyed the shit out of this movie. It was very funny to me. I enjoyed it the same way that I enjoy like the Resident Evil movies. They're very funny.
You know when they're all in the semi and they're driving away through, and you see it like from the semi coming toward you angle from like maybe a bird's eye view.
Yeah,
that was so horribly like edited that we laughed at that point too.
Oh, because the CG, that was a CG.
Yeah,
problem.
it was
the CG. Oh, the fire.
CG
the CG
was
fire.
really bad. Yes.
Well, they spent all their money by name dropping those weapons.
True.
No, they spent all their money on that animatronic baby at the end.
Oh yeah, that was funny. That was funny to me,
man.
only because that baby was like. That baby was too good for this movie. That baby looked so real, but it was obviously not a real baby. But it looked really good. It's like, how did they afford this very lifelike fake baby?
I wanted to point out the one scene. I think it was actually the tank scene. I don't think it was an RPG. I think it was the tank that shot at the theater. Where it was an RPG because it was like an RPG hit the camera and the camera did a tumble. And I thought that like that scene was really cool because it disorients you as if an RPG had like, you know, struck you in because we're looking through the eye of the group. And so that scene was just really cool to me. I thought that the whole like camera tumbling to the ground, slowly getting up and like shell shock happening. I thought that was a cool scene.
I think I've just like seen that so many times that it didn't even connect.
What you mean, like in every found footage film?
Exactly.
So it's funny you say
and I
found
love
footage.
found footage. I love found footage. It's one of my favorite subgenres. And so like I've seen that scene 1,000 times, and so it's just
A
like, yep.
Purge found footage movie would be
Yeah, that would be
wonderful.
great.
That would be really cool.
Love
yeah.
that.
But I just thought it was a cool
They already
scene,
set it up
and
perfectly.
gotta respect it.
Security cameras everywhere.
The one thing that bothered me was the final fight between Father when like.
That's the
Adela
one thing that
is-
bothered you?
No. Sorry. The
We've been
big
talking a lot about
thing
what's about it, right?
was like that fight was very anticlimactic, where
Why?
like the big bad's finally there, and he just gets duffed. Like this is a 3v1 in Warzone level duffing, where one lasso comes out, grabs him by the neck, the other one comes out, pulls his weapon away, he gets pulled down and headshot. Like I felt like there could have been more fight.
But no.
No,
They had
I'm
to have
happy
a
that there
moment as
wasn't.
cowboys together.
Right.
That's right. They
Yeah,
had
no,
to
I
have the
know.
cowboy moment.
But
I
like,
didn't hate that.
I'm glad.
No,
I
I
liked
liked
the
the
cowboy
scene.
moment. I'm glad that it wasn't a whole fight. I don't think that every big bad needs to be a boss fight. Like you know, he was just another person, and they took him down
Yeah.
just like any other person. And I think that
Part
that
of
was
me-
appropriate.
Part of me really likes the way in which like the Alpha team or whatever gets completely annihilated at the end,
Yeah,
because it's like it's this idea of like Republican LARPers versus like people who like, because like Adela and Juan were in a freedom fighting force at one point, like even though I don't, it kind of is unclear at one point, and like you get a sense that like the Native American chief talks about, we've been
Ghetto?
fighting this fight for 500 years or whatever,
he's so
Yeah.
cool.
or like
Okay.
like, which
Go
again
ahead.
he gets. I get why they're throwing, they're throwing the native population, First Nations people, like that was our first sin as a country. We like, representation is important, right? But like he gets shoehorned in really bad as being just like in it for like, in the very beginning being like, yeah, the purge is bad, and at the end he's like, let's go to Mexico because the purge is bad, which is fine, okay. But like the fact that like all of these people who like clearly have some sort of training just beat the fucking shit out of the LARPers, and like, yeah, you're in our world, this is where like this is the reservation, right? You're gonna die now, and it's not even gonna be difficult
yeah,
for us.
and that's consistent with the Purge in general, where typically, once like the villains are and the good guys are in open combat, like the villains do not usually stand a chance. Like the horror element of the Purge usually comes from like Alan did actually make a pretty astute observation, I think, with the zombie field, because the Purge is horror by numbers, right? A lot of time you're trying to just avoid people entirely. Like there's several scenes in previous movies where it's about like big packs of purgers, and that's the scary thing. Like individual purgers being scary is not consistent. I think it's good that they aren't, and I think it's more
I mean, I
interesting
did
that
like
way.
the scene with Shadow and unnamed guy of them like with like the masks, like the bone masks on, beating ass. Like that was really cool in the one house.
Oh yeah, at the end.
Yeah,
was
that
on-
was a really cool scene.
On top of that, the guy
And
with
they
the
go, let's
fucking
go, and they just abandon
exploding-
everybody.
Yeah.
exploding bow and arrow. The moment I saw him have a bow and arrow, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And then I saw him attach dynamite to it. I'm like, now I'm way into this.
Honestly,
that was gonna be
my first thought when I saw the bow and arrow was like, okay, this is a little cliche, maybe too far. And then he did the dynamite, and I was okay with it. So that was where I went with that.
I thought he was only gonna do it with one arrow, and it was like to take out the dude on the mounted turret. And I went, oh man, that's tactical as fuck. But then he just had loads of them. I'm like, oh, he's taking out every car except the one with the dude with the mounted turret, where the guy just gets shot off immediately. I was just kind of
I mean,
like, well,
Again,
that's
you're in
good
their
target
world.
picking. Yeah,
I want to say it
agree.
was Adela that popped him, and if anyone's gonna go, like priority of target, machine gun guy.
Target
popped.
priority was
Like,
good.
my-
I
my-
liked that. I was like, okay, cool. But like, there could have been a scene where he was just mowing people down, but he never got to use the gun.
The movie, okay, so the final scenes are very fun. Like again, like those final action scenes are very fun. The action scenes in general are fun.
everything from when they get to El Paso onward is overall very enjoyable, I think.
It's not good, but it's fun. I and as someone who enjoyed most of this movie, or maybe the wrong reasons. I think I enjoyed those part of the movie for the right reasons. They were just little fun action scenes.
I think they own the genre the most at that point.
Yeah. That being said, that scene has an issue where it is very unclear how many white supremacists there are, how many of the resistance fighters there are at any given point. I'm pretty sure they kill everybody at least twice, except for Father and the main character. Because they show
they show it happen.
They show the shotgun shell guy with he's got like the shotgun shell horns. He dies at least 3 times.
And no one else has that look. Like they make it very clear that everybody has their own kind of look.
So on top of that,
it's almost like they just keep sending in more of the same dude over and
they're
over.
Just NPCs, Bobby.
Yeah.
They
made 5 models.
Yeah.
I found it kind of confusing in that final sequence where they're in the building because it wasn't very clear if Adela and Juan, or not Adela, if Juan and Dylan were in the same location as what was the chief's name?
Shadow.
Shadow?
His name was Shadow.
Shadow and his other guy with Explodey Bow. It was not clear. Was that the same?
They were in the back room.
I'm wrong.
Yeah, they went.
It wasn't
We'll
Shadow.
Get the back.
Chiago is his name.
Chiago. Okay, I thought it's funny you say that. So when I saw his name, the first time I saw it, I read it as Chicago, and I'm like, that's a strange name for a Native American. And then I saw it again, and I'm like,
I was just saying, I don't think it would be though.
Chicago is a Native American word.
Yeah,
it's onion swamp.
Most of our, especially in the Midwest, most of our towns and cities are just Native American names.
Yeah.
Yep.
But anyway,
I don't mean to cut in on this conversation about the back room, but I think we could probably rate this movie.
Oh yeah, Paperboy.
Yeah. Grant, why don't you start us off with your rating? So right. we rate movies 0 out of 5, half points, so 3.5, 4 are allowed. So what do you got? What do you got?
All right, I'm gonna give this movie a 1. I had fun with this movie. However, I don't think it was good. I think a lot of its scares are unearned. I feel like there are way too many fake outs for the 2 actual scares that happen at the end of it. Like I said, love the masks. I don't like that none of the characters show any growth. I don't like a lot of the, there's horror at the beginning and, Corbin was saying, the whole pack tactics, right? Numbers are scary. We didn't really get to see too much of that, and as we kind of have been critiquing about this movie the entire time, it pulls every punch it tries to throw. And that really kills it for me. And so, yeah, and also, Corbin brought up a good I did give Hellraiser a 2, so there's no way that this movie's getting more than a 2. So I was like, okay, 1.5 just out of pure enjoyment, or a 1. I'm not gonna give it that a half point out of pure enjoyment. I'll give it a 1, but I did have fun.
Okay, I think that is probably fair. Probably, Bobby, do you agree?
Probably.
I think so. I'm waffling, but I would actually probably go a little bit higher.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna give it a 1.5. The reasoning is, while this movie is toothless and gullless and has nothing really interesting to say, what it tries to say, well, obvious, is not a bad message. And in practice episodes, we did movies similar to this, and I gave that movie a 1.5. And it feels very similar or maybe I gave that movie a 2. But
I was just trying to think of what are you talking about? Resident Evil?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you did give it a 1.5. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's a movie I was thoroughly entertained by. I was thoroughly entertained by both by the Forever Purge, and I find it to be fun and funny and not particularly interesting, but it's just not a good movie. So it's a 1.5 out of 5. I mean, watch it if you like all these movies and you want to have a little bit of fun for an hour and a half, but it's just not great.
Yeah. So I'm going to continue the theme here. I'm gonna go just a little bit higher. I'm going to give this movie a 2 out of 5. Okay. I think that, I agree with everything that's been said. I mean, the movie is definitely spineless in every way that it could be, from the message to the violence, which cuts away almost every time it can. But
that's also true.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that, but the only violence you see is gun violence, which is just normal action movie stuff.
You see the one
everything else is you do see one good one, and it's near the beginning, which sets you up it sets your expectations way too high.
For sure.
But despite that, the movie is not egregiously bad. I mean, I think that it makes some wrong moves, but it's not poorly done. It's easily watchable. It's definitely fun. It's, is it a good horror movie? Not really. Is it a good action movie? Yeah, it's adequate. So 2, pretty normal, just below average, not terrible, fun.
I think I like a 1.5 better now that I think about it.
Well, you already put it in
I can bump it up. We're still in the scoring stage.
I don't know.
So I'm going to stop the tendency of an increase of a half point, because I'm also giving it a 2. And I think
how high could you go, right?
Corbin kind of nailed it pretty well. This is a pretty bad horror movie, but not a terrible action movie, so it kind of ends up being in that slightly under average category. There are aspects of this movie that I think are fun and enjoyable. I still don't really consider this much of a horror movie at all. No. It just didn't earn any aspects of that. It has slight horror imagery, but that's about it for me. I mean, there are jump scares, but I don't really feel like any of those were particularly well done. It just didn't do much with horror, which I think you can do well in The Purge, and we've seen that in some of the other Purge movies. So to me, it just ends in that kind of mediocre, slightly under average area of a 2. I do want to see some of the other ones. That is the one thing I think that this movie did do well for me, is it does make me want to see some of the other movies, because they sound like they could be more interesting and follow more along the path of horror, or actually doing something with their theme. It's that's to me is the biggest fault of this movie, is it has this whole idea of purge, one night to kill people, and it squanders its own IP in a way. It's weird.
From what Corbin and Bobby tell me, the first Purge, the prequel, is actually pretty good in what it tries to do.
I would say it's the best one.
I think the best one is definitely either the first Purge or the first Purge. One of those two are the best ones. They do the most with the concept and the lore, and are also just good movies, I think.
I like
2 and 3 are solid. They go together really well. Election Year and the second one.
I would say the second one has a really interesting the revenge story element. He's he's on a mission during his purge to kill somebody for I can't remember the reason. But I would say that's another problem with this movie is its plot is even kind of dumb. The elements to it is really dumb. They could have done it. They could have even done the idea better. But we already gave this movie a score.
Section 2.
So I would recommend the other. I would recommend all of the other Purge movies. So, but despite all of that, is it essential? Spoiler free. Bobby's already laughing.
I mean,
spoiler free section. Alan's gonna go first. Is it essential, boys?
Hard no. There is no reason if you're recommending horror movies to people, and that's effectively what this podcast is, essential scares. This is almost the antithesis of a recommendation for me, because it does nothing with horror in a way that I think is interesting. I don't think it does anything that makes you feel much. It's so much more a generic action movie than it is a horror movie, that to recommend it to someone looking for horror would be a kind of a dick move, honestly. Just the idea of hey, I really want to get into horror. How about you go watch the Forever Purge? What? That would be, if someone said that to me and I watched this movie, I'd come back to them and be like, what? Why would you tell me to watch that? That was nothing. There was nothing there in relation to horror that did anything for me. So to me, this to me is the most no we've had on the cast so far by a landslide for me.
Oh man. All right, I'll go next because I have a pretty interesting answer, I guess, because this did open my eyes to something. No, this movie isn't
racism bad.
Racism bad, dude. No,
Grant confirmed racist until watching the Forever Purge.
No, this
turns out the message was necessary.
This movie is not essential, and just because, like, what does it do, right? Like, that's the question you have to ask yourself. What does it do? Is it going to influence the horror genre as a whole? No. The one thing that I took away from this, and it's something that I did want to mention, is that I've been one of the believers of just like, hey, if you have a gun, use it. And this movie shows guns are boring. Right? You know, the huge thing that I always was like, I don't know if they always have to be boring, but after watching this movie, wanting like cool kills because it's the Purge, and like I get the trap immediately, right? Oop. The trap is in the trailer, so that's okay, it's still spoiler free. But the guns are boring.
Yeah, there's a reason why in Halloween, when Michael Myers gets a shotgun, he stabs somebody with it instead of firing the gun. It's just not interesting to pull the trigger, like every other movie does it.
Right, and so like that's
almost
the
like this
one
was an
thing,
action movie.
The only thing that I would have said is it is an essential movie to watch if you want to know that guns are boring, for sure. Because I was on one side, and then I watched this movie, and like Corbin afterward, I said, yeah, guns are boring. Like there were no cool kills really. I was kind of like, guns are boring. I'm in now. So
I get it now.
No, this movie is not essential.
Okay. I agree with basically everything that Alan said, exactly the way that he said it. I don't know if I even have anything else to add, honestly. I think that it's not essential as a horror movie. I think that even if as an action movie, not that this is essential action, I don't think that it would be counted there. I don't think that it is an essential Purge movie, easily the least interesting and the worst in the franchise. Yeah, I would say unessential, but enjoyable. Bobby is gonna hit us with a yes on this. I feel it.
I'm gonna hit it with a maybe.
Okay.
It might be, but not for the reasons anybody wants it to be.
Uh-huh.
I think that this will be a movie that will be derided, like, and hated by a lot of people, but especially certain political affiliations that might get offended by the subject matter of this film, this movie, to the point where it will attain a status that is like somewhat important.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that very easily happening because it's going to be popular. People are going to see this movie because it's a Purge movie. It's a known IP, right? And this movie is, you know, if you listen to the spoiler cast, you guys know is saying a fairly milquetoast, fairly obvious, hopefully for anybody who's listening to this podcast, political ideology, and, you know, social ideology, that I think certain people are going to be really upset by still, even though it's milquetoast. I think that is going to get a lot of people hate watching, and the way that internet communities work, it'll get a lot of people also defending it, to the point where it is going to become something that is going to get bigger. Mm-hmm. I haven't looked at reviews or anything like that, and I could be alone in this. That I'm sure there are people calling this movie brave, even though it's not. I'm sure there are people who have opinions very similar to ours, and I'm sure there are people who are saying this is the death of the Western world. And I think that in alone of itself depending on how long that firestorm lasts and how long that, certain political parties want to go with this, and social movements want to go with this, it can last for a while as something that stays in the headlines, and that would give it a certain level of essentiality. Do I think this movie is essential in the merits of a horror film? No, it's not good. It's just not a good movie. It was funny. It was fun. Like it's in that it's in that vein of bad horror that I really like. It's really good schlock.
Yeah.
But it's not a good horror film. But I'm kind of nervous that it might be essential.
I think that in that exact regard, literally only time will tell, right?
Yeah.
It's tough because that's not something that you can 100% predict. Maybe years from now we can look back and go like, well, turns out you probably do need to watch the Forever Purge because it led to the X and Y. But there's, I think, just as equal a chance that this movie ends up somehow just flying under the radar and nothing happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't want it to happen, but if Bobby is right, I'm happy to say that it's essential. That sort of social, commentary is exactly, I think, what leads to movies being essential. And it's tough when we do new movies. Because there's a lot of predictive analysis there with the social element, the cultural element.
Well, it's like something that might be considered by a lot of horror fans to be essential. And I'm not going to give my personal answer or anybody's, but like Sleepaway Camp. I don't think anybody watched Sleepaway Camp for the first time, and keeping this spoiler free for that movie because I'm sure we'll watch it at one point.
For sure.
And the ending, which is a very iconic ending.
Yep.
I don't think anybody would have seen that as an essential thing.
But now,
for a million different reasons, both negative and negative problematic connotations, as well as the positive things that came out of it, as it's something of iconic.
Yeah, but it took a long time to get to that status. A long time.
And that movie,
I know
again, is not that good.
That movie, but I don't know that I've ever seen it.
Yeah. You probably have heard people talk about it and know what he's talking about, even if you haven't seen it.
I think so. I don't want to say much, but I think I get what you're saying.
So yeah.
This could be something very similar, where if we continue down a certain path, a certain, I can be political on this side of it too, a certain fascist path in this country, this movie might regain some sort of oomph, and or this movie can regain a little bit of whatever. This movie is just another way of people who think that they're in touch, who are very clearly out of touch, don't understand the real struggles of even the people who are in this movie.
But none of us would recommend this as a horror movie.
Oh no. Oh no. But again, I don't, when we talk about the essentiality of it, sometimes it is you guys all said that Hellraiser was essential, and we don't all agree that Hellraiser is a good movie, even though it is. There is it's more complicated than that. It has to be. So I'm kind of I'm kind of at a loss here. I was full. I mean, you guys saw how heated I was after leaving the movie theater. I was like, this movie's fucking stupid. But now I'm like, oh god, could this movie be essential? Is my reaction enough to make it essential? I don't know.
Right.
So there's some room for debate, I think.
I agree. I think that there almost always is. I mean, I think that we even mentioned it after coming out of the theater, and this is a throwback to our first episode, but maybe there was some more argument to be had about The Conjuring being essential, thinking about the future of that franchise or how that goes. And it's just a different discussion when it's a new movie. And I stand by mine, and in the holding the air of positivity, I'll say that I hope it never becomes essential.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. For sure.
But that wraps up the conversation on the Forever Purge.
Yes. Oh man, speaking of Star Trek, everybody, what's your handles and what you've been up to?
Alan?
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
You can find me at a seal punter just about anywhere. If you took my recommendation and watched any disc golf last week, you would have saw the single greatest shot that has ever been filmed in disc golf. Highly recommend you go out and watch that. That's basically been it for me. I have not played anything. I have not had time for that. It's been wild at work. But you can find me tweeting. You can find me shooting out pictures of me out at the driving range in front of my house, just throwing my discs.
Nice.
Heck
I
yeah.
love that. Great.
You can find me everywhere at GFooty, GFOOTEY. And I've been playing Guilty Gear Strive, the new fighting game. Pretty fun. But that's basically the new thing. So that's me.
Do you recommend it? Is it good?
Like it, yeah. I like it a lot.
Okay. Bobby?
You can find me from my Twitch, so twitch.tv/the Red Weenie. Actually, if you are listening to this on the day this comes out, Monday, you can watch me right now play Resident Evil 7 because I still need to play that for next week's cast, and I'm committing right now to be playing that on Monday. So if you're listening to this right when this comes out, fresh out the kitchen, I will be playing it. No, not it's not. We're not releasing this on Monday.
Wait, how are you gonna have time to play this on Monday?
I have the day off.
I know, but we're watching Loki on Monday.
Yeah, but in the morning.
Okay.
So,
Well, there you go. If you listen
yeah.
to this podcast during your morning holiday commute,
Yeah.
Bobby's live right now.
Yeah, I'm live. I'll be playing for a couple hours in the morning.
I love that.
But yeah, that'll be what I'll be doing. Chill. Yeah. That's I haven't been doing much, but yeah, twitch.tv/threadweenie.
Nice. You can find me anywhere at Corbangarang. Lately, I have been in a really huge horror documentary mood. So I have watched the Kane Hodder documentary that's on Shudder, and then I watched Crystal Lake Memories, and then I watched Horror Noir. And I recommend all of them depending. The Friday the 13th Crystal Lake Memories documentary is really, really good. And even if you're not a Friday the 13th fan, they really go into every entry in a cool way. Horror Noir was awesome, but way too short. It feels rushed. I think that they had a good... It's based on a book, and I bet the book is really, really good. They definitely have a good concept there, but after watching 2 or 3 400-minute documentaries back to back to back, because I watched In Search of Darkness recently too, it just felt like there wasn't enough. But I recommend all of them. I
Never
would say.
Sleep Again's also very good.
Yeah, that's next on my list. Yeah. You can follow the podcast anywhere at Essential Scares. We're currently working on some extra places that you can follow us, so stay tuned for that. We'll make a post on the Facebook group, Discord, etc. But that about does it for this week, I would say. Happy 4th, everybody.
Yep.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you to Alan, Bobby, Grant for being on the show with me.
Oh.
Next week, we're playing Resident Evil 7 and watching Fear Street 1994. This has been Essential Scares, and I've been Corbin. Thanks,
And
guys.
decidedly unessential.